What a wonderful day. I used to sing that on my way to work in the morning. Listen, my mission every day is to fight for a smaller, less costly, and more accountable government. And over the last 5 years, our majority has advanced conservative reforms that will help our children and their children. We're now on track to cut government spending by $2.1 trillion over the next 10 years. We've made the first real entitlement reform in nearly 2 decades. And we've protected 99% of the American people from an increase in our taxes. And we've done all this with a Democrat in the White House. So I'm proud of what we've accomplished. But more than anything, my first job as Speaker is to protect the institution. A lot of you know that, my plan was to step down at the end of last year. I decided in November of 2010 that when I was elected Speaker that serving 2 terms would have been plenty. And but in June of last year, when it became clear that the majority leader lost his election, I frankly didn't believe it was right for me to leave at the end of last year. So my goal was to leave at the end of this year. So I planned actually on my birthday, November 17th, to announce that I was leaving at the end of the year. But it's become clear to me that this prolonged leadership turmoil would do irreparable harm to the institution. So this morning I informed my colleagues that I would resign from the speakership and resign from Congress at the end of October. Now, as you've often heard me say, this isn't about me. It's about the people. It's about the institution. Just yesterday, we witnessed the awesome sight of Pope Francis addressing the greatest legislative body in the world. And I hope that we will all heed his call to live by the golden rule. But last night I started to think about this. And this morning I woke up and I said my prayers, as I always do. And I decided, today's the day I'm going to do this. As simple as that. That's the code I've always lived by. If you do the right things for the right reasons, the right things will happen. And I know good things lie ahead for this House in this country, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished, especially proud of my team. I've been here my 25th year here, and I've succeeded in large part because I've put a staff together and a team together, many of which have been with me for a long time. And without a great staff, you can't be a great member, and you certainly can't be a great speaker. I'm going to thank my family for putting up with this all these years. My poor girls, who are now 37 and 35, their first campaign photo was in July of 1981. And so they've had to endure all this. It's one thing for me to have to endure it. I've got thick skin. But the girls and my wife, they've had to put up with a lot over the years. Let me express my gratitude to my constituents who've sent me here 13 times over the last 25 years. You can't get here without getting votes. And I said this often. People ask me, what's the greatest thing about being Speaker or about being an elected official? And I said, well, it's the people you get to meet. I've met tens of thousands of people in my own congressional district that I would never have met other than the fact that I decided to run for Congress. And over the years, as I traveled on behalf of my colleagues in the party, I've met tens of thousands of additional people all over the country. And you meet rich people, you meet poor people, you meet interesting people, probably a few boring ones along the way. But I can tell you that 99.9% of the people I meet on the road, anywhere, could not be nicer than they've been. It's been wonderful. It's been an honor to serve in this institution. And with that, All right, Junior, go ahead.
Speaker Boehner, you were noticeably overcome with emotion yesterday.
Really?
With Pope Francis
What a
coming.
surprise.
I'm curious, if you reached this decision last night, if the grace of Pope Francis led you to this decision.
No. Yesterday was a wonderful day. It really was. And was I emotional yesterday? I think I was. I was really emotional in a moment that really no one saw. As the Pope and I were getting ready to exit the building, we found ourselves alone. And the Pope grabbed my left arm and said some very kind words to me about my commitment to kids and education. And the Pope puts his arm around me and kind of pulls me to him and says, "Please pray for me." Well, who am I to pray for the Pope? But I did.
If it wasn't the Pope, what was it?
Listen, it was never about the vote, all right? There was never any doubt about whether I could survive a vote. I don't want my members to have to go through this. I certainly don't want the institution to go through this. And so, especially when, I knew I was thinking about walking out the door anyway. So it's the right time to do it, and frankly, I am entirely comfortable doing it.
Mr. Speaker, I've heard you say before that a leader who doesn't have anybody following him is just a guy taking a walk.
That's right.
So,
I got plenty of people following me, but this turmoil that's been churning now for a couple of months is not good for the members, and it's not good for the institution. And if I wasn't planning on leaving here soon, I can tell you I would not have done this.
If I may just continue, there are people who are on the right in your caucus and even outside of this institution who have been wanting you to step down for some time, who feel that they have a victory today. Do you feel that you were pushed out?
No. The members, I'm glad I made this announcement at the conference with all of my Republican colleagues because it was a very good moment to help kind of rebuild the team. Listen, I feel good about what I've done. I know that every day, I've tried to do the right things for the right reasons and try to do the right thing for the country.
How can this not be a moment of turmoil? You said you thought about leaving 2 years ago after Canada, but it was the time you said this would have pitched the House in turmoil. You have to keep the government open in a couple of days, debt ceiling. There's going to be one person described as a barn burner of leadership.
I'm going to be here for another 5 weeks, and I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to sit around here and do nothing for the next 30 days. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I plan on getting as much of it done as I can before I exit.
And as a result, though, does that make it easier in some ways to make some tougher decisions, maybe relying on Democrats to keep the government open next week or something?
I'm going to make the same decisions I would have made regardless of this.
Mr. Speaker, you've made no secret of your frustration with some members of your far-right flank and some outside groups. You've used words like knuckleheads and some other words we probably can't use on television. Had you just had enough? And how will anything be different for the next speaker?
No, let me tell you, I would not describe it as having had enough. That's not it at all. When you're the Speaker of the House, your number one responsibility is to the institution. And having a vote like this in the institution, I don't think is very healthy. And so I've done everything I can over my term as Speaker to strengthen the institution. And frankly, my move today is another step in that effort to strengthen the institution.
But won't the next speaker face the same thing?
Hopefully not.
That's my question, Mr. Speaker. How will Washington be different because you leave this institution? What should people watching this expect the House and Congress to do going forward if you're not here?
Well, if the Congress stays focused on the American people's priorities, there will be no problem at all. And while we have differences between Democrats and Republicans, the goal here as one of the leaders is to find the common ground. Listen, I talked to President Bush and President Obama this morning. I've talked to all my legislative leaders who I have a very good relationship with all of them. Because at the end of the day, the leaders have to be able to work with each other, trust each other, to find the common ground to get things done. So if the Congress stays focused on what is important to the American people, they'll get along just fine.
Can you tell us how your conference reacted to the news?
Oh, I say they were shocked. Surprised.
Elaborate a little more on that? Maybe how the leadership itself reacted?
Yeah, I told Mr. McCarthy about 2 minutes before I spoke what I was going to do, and I had to tell him 5 times because he didn't believe me. I said, you better believe me.
Should McCarthy be the next speaker?
Listen, I'm not going to be here to vote on the next speaker, but that's up to the members. But having said that, I think that Kevin McCarthy would make an excellent speaker.
Who was the first person you told, and what did they say?
Well, I told my wife. Good. I told my chief of staff and I talked late yesterday. And I told him I was thinking that today might be the day, and I told him I'd sleep on it. So before I went to sleep last night, I told my wife, I said, I might just make an announcement tomorrow. Well, what do you mean? What kind of announcement? Well, I might just tell them it's time to go. So this morning I woke up and walked up to Starbucks as usual and got my coffee and came back and read and walked up to Pete's Diner and saw everybody at Pete's and got home and thought, yep, I think today's the day. So my senior staff was having a meeting at 8:45 and kind of walked in before I opened the house and told them, this is the day. What's going to happen sometime? Well, why not today?
You know when the next election might be held?
No. Paul.
What advice will you give Kevin McCarthy based on your 5 years? What advice do you give him to avoid the same pitfalls that you've come across?
Well, I'll tell Kevin, if he's the next speaker, that his number one responsibility is to protect the institution. Nobody else around here has an obligation like that. Secondly, I tell him the same thing I've just told you. If you just do the right thing every day for the right reasons, the right things will happen. You all know me. My colleagues know me. I'm always straight with them. They may not like the answer they get, but they'll get an honest answer every single time they come to my office. It's just an easy way for me to do my job.
You originally planned to announce this on your birthday, and if it wasn't the Pope, what factors sort of weighed in on your decision to do this now?
Just all this stuff I read about in the paper, and it's. I really don't want the institution hurt, and I don't want my colleagues hurt. I don't want to put my colleagues through all this. For what? So, yes.
Speaker, what are you going to miss?
Pardon me?
What will you miss?
What will I miss? Well, of course, all of you. I don't know what I'm going to miss because I haven't missed it yet. But I'll certainly miss the camaraderie of the House. I may tell you another story that was really kind of interesting. Maxine Waters and I, Democrat from Southern California, came here 25 years ago in the same class. Now, there's nothing about my politics and Maxine Waters' politics that's even anywhere close. But yesterday, about 5:30, she called my office. I got a note that she called, so I called her back. And and she said, I've watched you for 25 years here. We came here together and watched your career, and watched you today. And she says, I just want to tell you something. I'm really proud of you. Listen, I've got the best relationships on both sides of the aisle because I treat people fairly and treat them honestly, but I'm going to certainly miss my colleagues. Yes.
To go back to this theme of trying to take turmoil out of the House and stabilize the institution, how do you think that it can become more stable? Several Republicans I talked to today from your conference said they don't think a new speaker will mean any new outcome, especially with an untested leader, maybe untested leadership. How could it become more stable?
As I mentioned earlier, the fact that I did this with my colleagues this morning, then we proceeded to have an hour and a half conversation, I thought was a unifying moment. And between that and the Pope's call for living by the Golden Rule yesterday, hope springs eternal.
Mr. Speaker, can you talk about what you think your legacy is as you're leaving? What are your most important accomplishments? And what are you going to do on November 1st? Are you moving to Florida?
I was never in the legacy business. You all heard me say it. I'm a regular guy with a big job. And I never thought I'd be in Congress, much less ever be Speaker. But people know me as being fair, being honest, being straightforward, and trying to do the right thing every day on behalf of the country. That's I don't need any more than that.
You seem very relieved in your speech right now. Yeah, I mean, by singing Zippity Doo Dah, what are your plans next? And also, have you spoken to?
You know, when you make a decision this morning, you really haven't any time to think about what I'm going to do in the future. I have no idea. But I do know this. I'm doing this today for the right reasons. And you know what? The right things will happen as a result. Thanks.
You spoken to Pelosi at all?
Oh, yeah.
Where President Obama
Please exit from the back due to the size of the crowd. Thank you.
Yes, I am. Like, please, towards the back. Please, towards the back, please. Next to Ben. Please.
Nobody calls between us.
All right, guys, obviously very big news from Speaker of the House John Boehner this morning announcing his resignation. We just listened to the full press conference. Ron Hoon will be joining me momentarily so we can chat about it. One of the things, obviously, that he was asked about was whether the Pope influenced his decision or not. As you guys know, Boehner got a bit emotional during the Pope's appearance in D.C. yesterday at the state capitol. In fact, I have some video of that for you guys in case you missed the Pope's appearance. So let me go ahead and show you a little bit of Boehner as he is getting rather emotional here.
Yeah, no kidding.
I just wanted to show the viewers that one of the questions that the reporter asked in that press conference obviously was whether Pope Francis's visit had anything to do with Boehner's decision. One of the things he came out straight at the very top was saying the fact that he wanted to resign last year.
Yeah.
That was kind of surprising.
Yeah, it was. And yet, I think he had a lot of fight in him, but now he doesn't anymore. I think based on all of the kind of vitriol that had been aimed at him from members of his own party,
Right, right.
who didn't like the fact that he came from the style of governing that said, you're not going to get everything you want. Let's get as much as we can get. That's the way Washington works. And a lot of people more recently elected said, no, we don't want to compromise anymore. We want to have things our way or the highway. And I think that was really frustrating to him. And a lot of politicians, including even presidential candidates, had really been ripping him lately. And here's a guy who decided before that he was going to leave and thought, well, I'll come back for another term and maybe one more term.
And it's good that he got the Pope there.
Yeah, and I really thought, looking back on the last 24 hours and what a just sobbing mess he was.
Let's look at that. I'm going to pull this video up again. Let's just
during,
look at this.
During the Pope's speech.
Right here.
Yeah, and that's nothing
There
compared to when
when they were actually in
correct, in the chamber, and the Pope
right.
was giving his address.
Right.
I really, when we first heard about it this morning, I thought, well, he had already made up his mind yesterday, and he knew he was leaving, and the whole emotion of it, the whole situation is very emotional.
Right.
But, then to actually hear, which to me, Samia, was one of the best news conferences I have ever heard come out of Washington, because he was so honest.
Right.
He was so honest, and he just basically said, this is exactly how it all went down.
Right.
And I got up this morning and said my prayers like I always do, and then I thought to myself, why not? Why not do it today? Why not?
He came off as very likable
He
in
did.
that moment.
Yeah, well, he's always been, I think he has been kind of likable just because he's the emotional part of him, to me, is, it just shows how,
that emotion.
Yeah, it just shows how real he is.
There he is. Emotional as can be.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, you look at that face and you say to yourself, does that look like the face of a man who knows his time is over? Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but obviously we know it was on his mind because he even spoke to his chief. He did later say in the news conference, yeah, I did talk to my chief of staff about it yesterday.
Right.
And so I think it really was on his mind. I think as the day went on yesterday, for whatever moments happened, the thought was planted and he thought about it more and more. Enough so that by the end of the day, he calls the chief of staff in and says, I'm just going to give you that.
And what better day to do it than the day after you accomplish this thing that you've wanted to accomplish for more than 2 decades? Those of you who don't know, Boehner has been trying to get popes to speak to Congress for more than 20 years.
Yes, right.
And he's always extended the invitation and no one has accepted until Pope Francis did. So that's kind of a big deal too.
Yes, I totally agree. Totally agree. I mean, it is, that was a long-term goal. And so he, the thing about it is that I asked Chris Wallace today. I said,
you spoke with Chris Wallace before the announcement.
That is correct. Right. That was at about 6 a.m. By about 7 a.m., we knew this was happening. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I talked to him about today, hey, here's your Hooner history lesson, 10 seconds. There was once a time in our country that was known as the era of good feelings, because I believe it was during, right after Madison's presidency, James Monroe's presidency. And so, you had Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe. Those are the first 5. And
they all have streets named after them.
They do.
Phoenix.
They're all right downtown anytime you want to come visit. But there was such a level of cooperation that it was sort of the golden age of people being able to get stuff done and everybody sort of moving kind of together with different interests, which is completely dead now in Washington. But I wondered if yesterday was at least a day of good feelings, which it was, that could last a while longer. My analysis for you today, SK, is that not only will it not last for very long, John Boehner's departure probably makes it last even shorter.
Do you think it's going to create tension again?
Oh, there's going to be a fight right out of the chute. You see this Kevin McCarthy guy who was standing behind him on the
From Bakersfield.
That's right. So he's a San Joaquin Valley kind of guy.
When he said the name, I was like, I've interviewed him before, and I did a Google. I was like, yes, he's the guy. He's from Bakersfield, and I totally remember.
When did you interview him?
When I used to work in Bakersfield in 2008.
What was the story? What was did you go out to his office or did he come into the studio? Let's hear it.
It wasn't in the studio. I was a reporter. I was out in the field, and I don't remember. I just remember interviewing him because you know how there's so many events. I don't even remember if it was a package or a VOSOT.
Yeah, right.
I was just getting a quick soundbite, but I know for a fact that I have interviewed him. I just don't remember the story.
Did he? Go ahead.
That's it. I mean, it's something to do with Bakersfield, obviously.
That's right. Did he? I've stayed at that courtyard in Bakersfield, by the way. Did he seem like a little bit of a slick politician, or did he seem like a really genuine guy, honestly?
You know, I wish I could answer that, but again, I was like 22. I was very young.
Well.
And I don't really think that I was paying attention to him in terms of how he carried himself as a politician. You know, as a reporter, especially when you are doing one-man band reporting where you're shooting your own stuff, writing it, editing it, it's all about getting stories quickly. So I think my focus was get my sound bites and leave.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, if it were the year 2015 and I had an opportunity to interview him, specifically today, I would have a lot of questions, and they would probably be very memorable questions.
Yes, I'm sure. Oh, that's a really cool little sidelight. But so he's the guy that's standing behind Boehner, not obviously when the Pope is speaking to Congress, but outside in front of that huge crowd. And you would think, being the number 2 man for the Republicans, Boehner number 1, McCarthy's number 2, so he's the majority whip. You would think that traditionally they have just moved that guy into the top position, but it is such a kind of politically fractured time that we just have to wait to see if that really is going to happen or not, because there are going to be plenty of people in the new group of congressmen who don't like him because they think he's just another Boehner. So if he can figure out a way to hold Boehner's supporters together and reach out to enough, say, Tea Party supporters and bring them in, then the job will be his. But even though he would be favored, there are going to be a lot of his fellow congressmen and women who are not going to favor him. So there could be quite a fight. And if he doesn't get it, and it starts to lean more to the most conservative members in the House, then what does that tell you? You got this political spectrum that starts far left to far right, and Boehner was a little too close to the middle for a lot of people in his party. So now you got Kevin McCarthy, who's right about there as well. So very little gets done in Washington, but at least some things get done. But to finish up my thought, if you get somebody who's all the way over here, the odds of getting anything done, that actually involve...
Probably not happening.
We'll see. I mean, maybe it's somebody who's such a dynamic leader. They could choose the most conservative member of the entire House of Representatives, and if he's such a dynamic leader and has such great leadership skills, and gets enough votes that he can actually make things happen, it's possible. But I'm just prepared. I'm just telling you today on Friday, I'm prepared for what could be a pretty good fight.
Tess saying whoever comes in as speaker will try to be the anti-Boehner, which means they will come out fighting. And a Spice Girl, totally agree, Ron. This is not going to be an easy transition. It's going to be a real poop show. Oh my gosh. Cindy Spice Girl saying, what is your thought on Paul Ryan?
That was Les Chow Mein?
Cindy Spice Girl.
Cindy Spice Girl. That's a really good question. Now, that's a really